A man who never seemed to age, who spoke every language, who dazzled kings, dabbled in alchemy, and vanished without a trace, who was the Count of Saint-Germain. Imagine hearing whispers in royal courts about a mysterious man who never seemed to grow old. One day he's entertaining nobles in Paris, charming them with tales of ancient civilizations. A few decades later, he's spotted in Vienna, still looking the same, still speaking in riddles, still cloaked in mystery, and then, suddenly, gone, only to resurface again in another city, decades later, unchanged. This man, if we can even call him that, was known as the Count of Saint-Germain, a nobleman, a scholar, a musician, an alchemist, and possibly something more. His life is one of history's most intriguing puzzles. No one really knows where he was born or even when. Some believed he was the son of a Transylvanian prince. Others said he was a Portuguese Jew. Some whispered that he had discovered the secret to eternal life. But here's what we do know. In the 18th century, he was a familiar name among the elite of Europe. He was seen in the courts of Versailles, in the drawing rooms of London, and on the streets of St. Petersburg. He spoke half a dozen languages fluently. He painted, he composed, he had a fascination with science and a reputation for being, well, strange. Over time, his story blurred the lines between history and legend. Was he an immortal? A genius con artist? A spy? Or something far more mysterious? And yet, perhaps what's most fascinating isn't whether the Count of Saint-Germain was immortal, but why so many people believed he could be. So who was he really? A brilliant eccentric or a timeless enigma? Let's rewind the clock and follow his trail to his first recorded footsteps in European high society. To uncover who he really was, we must go back to his earliest appearances in the courts of Europe. Trying to trace the Count of Saint-Germain's beginnings is like chasing a ghost through fog. No birth certificate, no reliable childhood tales, just theories and plenty of them. Some claimed he was born in 1691, others said 1712. A few even suggested dates outside that range, as if the man had simply stepped out of nowhere. One of the most intriguing theories places him as the illegitimate son of Prince Francis I Rákóczi of Transylvania, hidden away and raised in secret. Others guessed he might have been a Portuguese Jew, or even a lost noble with connections to ancient wisdom. And then, of course, some insisted he was no more than a clever imposter who built an identity out of mystery. One lesser-known account even claimed he was raised in a monastery where he was taught ancient languages and mystical sciences by monks who believed he was destined for something extraordinary. If true, that might explain his early brilliance and his flair for the dramatic. But wherever he came from, by the mid-1700s, Saint-Germain had stepped boldly into the spotlight of European high society. He wasn't just another aristocrat mingling at the royal courts. He was the man everyone whispered about. In Versailles, he impressed the French elite with his manners and intellect. In London, he dazzled with his knowledge of chemistry and the occult. In Vienna, he charmed audiences with his musical talents. Everywhere he went, he left behind a trail of awe and confusion. Descriptions from people who met him are startlingly consistent. He dressed in the finest clothes, wore diamonds not just as jewelry, but even sewn into his coats. He was fluent in French, German, English, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, Arabic, and possibly more. Some said he spoke each language like a native. He played the violin like a virtuoso, painted with a delicate hand, and spoke about ancient events with a familiarity that seemed impossible. One account from a diplomat in Holland stated that Saint-Germain casually spoke of events from 200 years prior, as if he had just returned from witnessing them. This uncanny sense of history only added fuel to the idea that he was far older than he appeared. Even his habits were strange. He avoided meat, he never drank alcohol, and no one, not even those who knew him for decades, ever saw him age. What's more, he rarely revealed personal details. People close to him would realize, often after years of acquaintance, that they knew absolutely nothing about his past. No childhood stories, no family ties, no slip-ups, just the present. Always the polished, elegant present. People were enchanted but also wary. Was he simply a man ahead of his time, or was there something truly unnatural about him? But what truly stunned Europe wasn't just his brilliance. It was his seemingly endless lifespan. That's where the real legend begins. People who met him in 1710 swore he looked exactly the same when they saw him again in 1740, and then again in the 1780s. Some even claim to have crossed paths with him in the 1800s, still sharp, still elegant, still untouched by time. Take Madame de Pompadour, the influential mistress of King Louis XV. She described him as a man who appeared to be in his 40s for decades. Casanova, the legendary lover and adventurer, met Saint Germain and called him a man who knows everything and never dies. Even the great Voltaire joked, or maybe half believed, that the Count was immortal. There's even a reported conversation between Voltaire and King Frederick of Prussia, where the king asked if Saint-Germain was truly immortal. Voltaire allegedly replied, "He is a man who never dies, and who knows everything." It wasn't just witty sarcasm. Many of Voltaire's contemporaries believed he was speaking in earnest. Now, how do you explain that? Some believed he had discovered the secret to eternal youth through alchemy. The philosopher's stone, the elixir of life. These weren't just myths in his world, they were real possibilities. He often hinted at secret knowledge, ancient wisdom, and formulas no one else could replicate. Then came the more out-there ideas. In more recent years, people have speculated that Saint-Germain was a time traveler, or even an alien in disguise. Others said he was simply a master illusionist using makeup, wigs, and doubles to maintain the illusion of agelessness. One 19th century writer noted that portraits of Saint-Germain painted decades apart showed no physical change, no graying hair, no wrinkles, no visible signs of time. Artists either had uncanny consistency, or they were painting the same unchanging man. But here's the thing, nobody could prove anything. He never stayed long enough in one place. He never left behind diaries, personal letters, or anything that might confirm his secrets, just rumors, eyewitness accounts, and a growing pile of unanswered questions. And even those who didn't believe in magic couldn't deny this. Too many credible people had seen him, spoken to him, and walked away convinced that something about him wasn't normal. So if he really was centuries old, what had he been doing all that time? And if his age was strange, his skills were downright supernatural. Let's dive into what made the Count of Saint-Germain not just ageless but legendary. It's one thing to live a long time, it's another to master everything you touch. And Saint-Germain? He wasn't just impressive, he was intimidating. A true polymath, a man who moved through the arts, sciences and politics like he'd had several lifetimes to practice. Let's start with alchemy, the most mysterious of his passions. He often spoke of the ability to transform base metals into gold and claimed he could purify gems and create flawless diamonds. Some nobles even believed he had discovered the Philosopher's Stone, that mythical substance capable of granting immortality and infinite wisdom. Witnesses described him working in private laboratories, often behind closed doors, surrounded by strange instruments and chemicals. He once boasted he could repair flawed diamonds, even claiming to know how to make pearls grow larger. These weren't just idle claims. People believed him because his confidence and detail made you want to believe. But his talents didn't stop there. He was a gifted composer, known to have written several pieces of music. Some even said he collaborated with Jean-Philippe Rameau, one of France's leading composers. He painted too, with a style that was ahead of its time. And when he wasn't making music or painting, he wrote essays and poetry with the eloquence of someone fluent in both thought and language. Now here's where it gets political.
Saint-Germain didn't just sit in drawing rooms sipping tea and playing a violin. He was also suspected to be a spy, or at least a diplomatic agent. He traveled extensively, often at the request of royalty. Louis XV himself is said to have trusted Saint-Germain with sensitive assignments. Rumors swirled that he was involved in clandestine meetings, secret treaties, and delicate intelligence missions between European powers. Some believed he played both sides, appearing loyal, while subtly shifting the tides of political alliances. He never confirmed anything, of course. That was part of the mystery. He never revealed too much, never stayed too long, and never left without leaving people wondering who or what he really was. So, with all that knowledge, wealth, and power, surely, eventually, death would catch up with him.
right? Well, not quite. Let's take a closer look at what happened when the Count of Saint-Germain supposedly met his end, and why, for many, that only deepened the mystery. In 1784, reports claimed that the Count of Saint-Germain had died in Eckernförde, Germany. He had been staying with Prince Charles of Hesse, one of the few people considered a close friend of the Count. According to official accounts, the prince oversaw his funeral and even arranged a burial. And that should have been the end of it. But here's the thing. It wasn't. Just 5 years later, in 1789, amid the chaos of the French Revolution, he was reportedly seen in Paris, looking exactly as he had before. Witnesses swore it was him. Same face, same voice, same strange spark in his eyes. Then he was seen in Milan in 1815, calmly discussing politics like he hadn't missed a beat. A century later, rumors emerged of him appearing in New Orleans during the early 1900s. In fact, a local New Orleans newspaper reportedly mentioned a mysterious man matching his description who claimed to have traveled across centuries and had knowledge of court life from long ago. His name wasn't listed as Saint-Germain, but his presence sparked immediate comparisons. People weren't just confusing him with someone else, they were convinced it was him. And it wasn't just curious citizens fueling these stories. Major names from the mystical and spiritual communities picked up the trail. Helena Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical Society, claimed that Saint-Germain had never died. Instead, she said he had become one of the ascended masters, spiritual beings tasked with guiding humanity through higher wisdom. To her followers, he was a timeless guide, still watching over the world, appearing only when needed. Others believe he simply knew how to disappear, to shed identities, adopt new ones, and re-enter society as someone else. Over time, his face would show up in paintings, photographs, and even official records under different names, but always with the same air of mystery and genius.
Another intriguing mention came in 1930s Germany, where a man using the name Sanctus Germanus was reportedly advising occult circles, sharing eerily familiar philosophies and practices that echoed what Saint Germain was known for centuries earlier. Some claimed he hadn't aged a day. There's also a documented encounter from a Parisian woman in 1820, who wrote in her journal that she met a Count S.G. at a gathering, who looked just like the Saint Germain her grandmother once described, youthful, polite, and unnervingly wise. She dismissed it as coincidence, but wrote, "His eyes made me feel like I was speaking to someone centuries older than he appeared. So what do we make of this? Was his death faked? Was it even real? Or had the Count of Saint-Germain truly slipped into a realm beyond death, one foot in our world, the other in something much stranger? So who was this ageless wanderer really? What are we to make of this legend? Let's weigh the theories from the wild to the plausible and try to make sense of the impossible. Number 1, an immortal alchemist. Let's start with the most romantic idea. Was he really an immortal alchemist? Many believed he had discovered the legendary elixir of life, a potion said to grant eternal youth. Some said he found the Philosopher's Stone, the holy grail of alchemy that could turn metal into gold and unlock immortality. The way he spoke about history, the confidence with which he referenced ancient events, it all fed into the belief that he wasn't just well-read, he had been there. Number 2, a wandering alien or a time traveler. Then there's the more sci-fi version. Was he a time traveler, or perhaps even an alien? Modern conspiracy theorists have a field day with this. They argue that his knowledge of science, his language skills, and his ability to predict world events were all signs that he came from somewhere else. In this view, the Count wasn't a man at all, but a visitor, sent here for reasons unknown, watching, learning, intervening, occasionally. Now let's shift gears. What if he wasn't just one person? Some believe that Saint Germain was actually a title passed down through generations or used by a secret society. The idea is that multiple people adopted the name and persona to carry out secret missions or keep certain ancient knowledge hidden. That would explain how he could appear in different places, at different times, looking ageless because it wasn't the same man at all. Number 3, a brilliant con man. And finally, the most grounded but still fascinating theory. Was he simply a brilliant con man, a man with a photographic memory, unmatched charm, and a talent for reinvention, someone who used mystery as a shield and charisma as a weapon? It's entirely possible. History has seen its fair share of master manipulators, and the Count might have just been the best of them all. But here's what makes the legend so compelling. Every theory sounds just possible enough to be true, and that's the Count's real magic. He was never pinned down, never explained, never ordinary. Centuries later, the Count still fascinates artists, historians, and even spiritual seekers, and that fascination has only grown especially in today's world of pop culture and occult lore. 7. Saint Germain in pop culture and occult lore. 1. Inspiration for literature and film. In literature and film, he's become a sort of pop culture Easter egg, an immortal figure who pops up in the most unexpected places. He's been featured in vampire novels, where eternal life fits his myth like a glove. In the TV series Outlander, he appears as a refined and mysterious antagonist. The Assassin's Creed video game franchise gives him a major role in its lore, tying him into ancient secret orders. He even shows up in comic books, often portrayed as a man who's seen everything and lived through every age. It's like storytellers can't resist him, a character who might be spy, sorcerer, or savior, depending on the tale. And really, who better to write into your story than a man who has no beginning and no confirmed end? 2. Mysticism and occultism. But it's not just fiction writers who keep his name alive. In the world of mysticism and occultism, Saint Germain has taken on an almost divine role. In Theosophy, a spiritual movement started in the 19th century, he's considered one of the ascended masters. These are enlightened beings believed to have transcended physical form and now guide humanity from a higher plane of existence. According to followers, Saint Germain didn't die, he evolved, becoming a kind of cosmic mentor for those seeking spiritual truth. In New Age circles, he's often linked with the violet flame, a mystical energy said to cleanse negative karma. Entire groups meditate with the intention of connecting to his wisdom. To them, Saint Germain is still here, not in body, but in energy, whispering to those who listen. And yes, the sightings didn't stop. Some claim he was seen in the 20th century, popping up at conferences, meeting quietly with political leaders, or walking anonymously through city streets. A few modern cults even believe he still walks among us, quietly influencing the course of history. Whether you see him as a myth, a mystical teacher, or a clever creation, one thing is clear: Saint Germain has become more than a man. He's a symbol, an idea, a living legend. And that brings us to the final, most important question of all. So, who was the Count of Saint Germain? A musical genius, a brilliant scientist, a smooth-talking spy, a man who mastered the art of reinvention? Or was he something else entirely, something beyond explanation? Even after centuries, we still don't have a clear answer. And maybe that's exactly the point.
What we do know is that Saint-Germain was a man of incredible intellect, undeniable charm, and impossible mystery. He stood at the crossroads of history and legend, just real enough to be documented, just strange enough to be doubted. He seemed to live outside of time, popping in and out of history like a thread woven loosely into the fabric of our past. Why does he still fascinate us? Saint-Germain represents that part of us that wants to believe in more than just birth and death, more than just facts and timelines. He's the embodiment of our curiosity, our desire for wonder. Maybe he wasn't truly immortal. Maybe he didn't possess secret knowledge. Maybe, just maybe, he was simply a man who knew how to leave an unforgettable impression. But here's the beautiful irony. Even if the man himself is gone, the legend of Saint-Germain isn't. His name still echoes through books, films, philosophies, and conspiracy theories. People are still spotting him in new places, still telling stories, still searching for clues. He's become something bigger than any one person could ever be. And as long as we keep telling his story, wondering who he really was and marveling at the mystery, in a way, he's still here.